Hello. I'm gonna wait another minute or two until to see if anybody else comes in for introductions and instructions. Okay, I'll get started. Thanks for coming in. I'm gonna do a quick introduction and instructions to mindfulness. Uh, sorry for there's a lot of light back there. So thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna be doing the same instructions and introduction pretty much every time. So if you need, um, a refresher in terms of the instructions and whatnot, they're going to be relatively the same every time, 15 minutes before the hour marker when the meditation starts. So if you have any questions, ask in the chat. If I can't get to it before, I'll try to address it at some point during the stream. So let's think of meditation and mindfulness as two different things. Meditation is a bigger and wider category of spiritual practices that include the practice of the technique of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of non judgmental awareness to whatever comes up and goes away in a given moment. It's about paying attention very intentionally to what is happening right now, but without grasping, holding onto, or attaching to what's going on. This practice involves focusing, noticing, and returning. So, focusing on what's going on right here, right now, in the present moment, noticing when our attention is straight away from the stream of experience, and returning to what's happening right here, right now. So, the point isn't to sort of find any an eternal sense of calmness or relaxation or something like that, um, but to cultivate a steady core, no matter what the experience is, the ability to come back regularly over and over and over again. So if you experience distress, if you have stray thoughts and whatnot, you're not doing it wrong or anything like that. That's a natural response. And how that distress is managed is going to differ from person to person. So let's go over some quick instructions. I practice within the Zen tradition, and we place a lot of emphasis on posture, um, both physical and mental postures. So as you'll notice, I'm sitting in a formal position on a mat and cushion. If you're interested in doing this, here are the important points to remember. So sit comfortably and straight. Your base. So I'm sitting on a mat and cushion. You're going to sit with your base on the front half to front third of your cushion. Your legs can be placed one in front of the other. As you see here, this is called the Burmese position. If you're flexible, you can put your foot on your calf. You can put it on your thigh. So that's quarter, half. And if you are able to put your other foot on um, top of your other thigh, that's a full lotus. But I'm not flexible enough to do that as an example for you. But if you're new, I simply suggest starting with Burmese, one foot in front of the other. With your hands, right hand palm open up, left hand Place it in there, palm up. Your thumbs will be lightly touching. You're not going to be squeezing them together or anything like that. Just very lightly touching. No gap. So to straighten your back, imagine that there's a string coming out of the top of your head, just lightly pulling it, taut. You don't want too much tension or anything like that. You just want to be straight, upright. With your elbows, you want to make sure that they're about a fist's distance away from your side, give or take. You basically don't want them touching, squeezing into your side, and you don't want them all the way out here. Your neck's going to be straight, your chin pulled slightly in. Your eyes are half open with the gaze 45 degrees in front of you. You can close your eyes if you want, but it is easier to stay awake and to be mindful if you're aware of what's in your visual field. You also have the option of sitting what's called seiza. The only real difference is that you'll be kneeling on the cushion. Everything else is the same. Same goes for if you're sitting in a chair. And, of course, there's no right way to do this. There's a traditional way of doing this. There's like a formal way of doing it, but there's no right way of doing it. So if you need to sit in a chair, that's perfectly fine. All the body positions are the same. Just keep your feet flat on the floor. So let's talk about what to do with the mind. We'll be using the breath as an anchor for our mindfulness practice. There are a lot of objects we can use, but we can pay attention to sounds. We can pay attention to smells. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can use as objects, but the breath is a popular one. It's an easy one to access because it's always available. It's always changing, and it connects us to our body immediately. So pay attention to your inhalations and your exhalations. Notice what it feels like throughout different parts of the body when you breathe in. So when you breathe in, how it feels like for the breath to come past your upper lip, through your nose, down the throat, how it fills up the chest and the abdomen. And notice what it feels like through different parts of the body when you breathe out. And the reverse. You don't need to breathe in any special or particular way. Just breathe naturally. You don't need to force your breath to be any particular way. A lot of this is, sort of finding a middle ground. There's nothing wrong with breathing really deeply or, breathing short, but you don't want to go too far on either end. You just want to be able to be aware of things. You don't want to force your breath to be in a particular kind of way. You want to start noticing where this grasping and this forcing is coming from and what it looks like and what it feels like when that happens. So for each cycle of inhalation and exhalation, that's one. So inhalation, exhalation. 1. Count up to 10. If you lose count, go back to 1. If you go up to 47, like I've done, that's perfectly fine. That means you weren't really being mindful, even though you thought you were. And that's perfectly fine. If you lose count at 1, that's fine. That's fine too. There's no doing this right or wrong. The point is to be mindful, to notice when we're not being mindful, and to return to the practice of mindfulness moment to moment. If you become distracted and your mind wanders, that's okay. Thoughts come and go and are perfectly natural, like clouds floating across the sky or waves in an ocean. Trying to stop your thoughts from happening is like trying to stop time. You won't, and you're just going to strain yourself trying to do so. So a lot of this practice is learning to be mindful of what, how, and when thoughts arise and go away, how they affect our relationship to things, and to cultivate that steady core of simply being present to the patterns and the processes that shape our perceptions. So want to make a note about discomfort. If you're uncomfortable at any time, you're free to discontinue. This kind of practice can bring up trauma or trauma adjacent experiences. So if you are feeling, very hyper aroused, very hyper vigilant, very anxious, and you're really unable to settle, or you're feeling hypo aroused, you're feeling very numb or listless or foggy, feel free to disengage and utilize whatever methods you have to stabilize yourself and to create a sense of safety in your environment. Uh, Meditative practice can be emotionally cathartic, but it doesn't have to be re-traumatizing. It can bring stuff up. Sitting with your discomfort and being aware and working through that discomfort is a very natural and regular part of this kind of practice. But you don't have to re-traumatize yourself doing so. Those are two different things. So find your window of tolerance and practice within it. Um, So, people who are experienced with this technique are going to fall asleep. They're going to have a difficult time. They're going to wonder if they're doing it right. Their body's going to hurt. Their legs going to fall asleep. They're going to feel bored. They'll feel like their practice isn't consistent. That's all perfectly normal. I've been doing this for a while. I still feel every single one of those things, probably all of them at one point or another during any time I sit or do mindfulness meditations. It's all normal. That's all part of the process. It's all okay. Mindfulness meditation is simple, but it's not always easy. And again, I'm going to just stress again, discomfort is normal, but you don't have to re-traumatize yourself just because it's part of the process. Those are two different things, and it takes time and awareness to figure out exactly what that is. So honestly, I think that it's a little better to be playing on the safe end if you know you have some trauma that might come up in these kinds of situations. But it is also definitely part of the process to work through discomfort and uh, titrate our ability to be aware of and to be present with discomfort. So I want to end with saying that it's ideal to be able to do this every day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes like we're going to be doing every day. Um, but even something like 5 minutes, 10 minutes every day is really, really crucial to creating a habit of this kind of practice, not just a formal time and a designated time where we sit on a cushion or sit in a chair, but be able to bring it into everyday circumstances like when you go out shopping, not touching your face, or just noticing what it feels like to have an itch on the face, or noticing what it feels like to wash your hands, or noticing what it's like to be on your fifth or sixth hour of doing work, whatever that work looks like. um, these micro moments of mindfulness and a uh, regular practice, no matter how long it is what really helps integrate the practice of mindfulness into all the daily activities that we do. And really, that's the key aspect, so that we can be present, non-judgmental, and aware at every moment that comes up. So that's all the instructions. Give us a few minutes to start. Probably start a minute or two after the hour, just because we're running really close to that time. If you need to adjust, if you need to grab something to drink, please feel free to do so now. Please remember that the meditation will be silent. There might be some ambient noises. My cat is sleeping behind me, and she might make a noise because she snores. Um, so, if you would need to play music or anything like that that helps you be mindful, please feel free to utilize them on your end. Okay. I'll be ringing bells to signal the start and the end of the sessions, and I'll start that in a minute or two. All right. Thank you for your effort. Um, so I'm going to be reading from something different this time. This is one of my favorite books, Opening the Hand of Thought by Kosho Uchiyama. He's a 20th century Zen teacher. So just for clarification, I'm going to be reading a page from this book. And he uses the word zazen, which is a bit of a slippery word, but in its most basic form, when we do sitting meditation, we are, in that sense, practicing zazen. But zazen is a bit of a larger word. It encompasses more than just sitting meditation, but it is also just sitting meditation. And when we talk about a lot of Buddhist terms, they all tend to be slippery. They all tend to refer to a little more than just one thing. Um, that's sort of both the frustration and the magic of a lot of of Buddhist thinking. And you'll hear references to posture, and in some sense, he really does mean like the formal posture that I'm talking about. Um, but I will also uh, encourage you to think about it as a mental posture too. That being upright in a formal physical sense is not just a physical thing, but being upright and doing what we've been doing, whether you're doing it on a cushion or kneeling or in a chair or walking, um, whatever it is, that is a mental posture too. There's a mental posture to mindfulness. There's a mental posture to doing meditation. When we actually do zazen, we should be neither sleeping nor caught up in our own thoughts. We should be wide awake, aiming at the correct posture with our flesh and bones. Can we ever attain this? Is there such a thing as succeeding or hitting the mark? Here is where zazen becomes unfathomable. In zazen, we have to vividly aim, holding the correct posture, yet there is never a mark to hit. It's my cat. Or at any rate, the person who is doing zazen should never perceive whether they have hit the mark or not. If the person doing zazen thinks that their zazen is really getting good, or that they have hit the mark, they are merely thinking that their zazen is good. Well, actually, they have become separated from the reality of their zazen. Therefore, we must always aim at doing correct zazen, yet never perceive the mark as having been hit. Can there really be such a strange contradiction? Generally, most people think that as long as there is an aim, it is only natural that there will be a target to hit. Precisely because there is a target, we can aim. However, if we know that there isn't a target, who is going to attempt to aim? This is the usual idea about give and take. This is people's usual calculating way of behavior. However, when we do zazen, we have to let go of our self centeredness and our dealings in relation to others. Zazen is just our self doing itself by itself. Zazen does zazen. Zazen is the throwing away of the calculating way of thinking, which supposes that as long as there is an aim, there must be a target. We just sit in the midst of this contradiction where, although we aim, we can never perceive hitting the mark. We just sit in the midst of this contradiction that is absolutely ridiculous when we think about it with our small mind. When we practice this kind of zazen and just sit, how indefinite we may feel, how unsatisfied or completely lost we may feel. Actually, this is exactly why zazen is so wonderful. This small self, this foolish self, easily becomes satisfied or complacent. We need to see complacency for what it is, just a continuation of the thoughts of our foolish self. However, in our zazen, it is precisely at the point where our small, foolish self remains unsatisfied or completely bewildered that immeasurable natural life beyond the thoughts of that beyond the thoughts of that self functions. It is precisely at the point where we become completely lost that life operates and the power of Buddha is actualized. I normally wouldn't do much of a commentary, but I do think there's a lot going on in this passage. So I'll do like a really, really, really small, quick commentary on it. And this is a wonderful passage because it really gets at the heart of what the sitting meditation is, whether it's you call it mindfulness, whether you call it something else. There's an aim, and then there's the idea that there's something to catch, that's something to hit. There's a standard by which it measures, and that's the trap. And this is why in my instructions, I always really really stress, and a lot of meditation instructions are like this. There's not something about doing it right. There's not about you doing it right such that you're perfectly calm all the time, that you're never going to be annoyed, that you're never going to be frustrated, and striving in the act of meditation to try to be perfectly calm is a trap. Um, there's a lot of ways that we trap ourselves by trying to be somewhere else other than what we're doing right here, right now. So the idea of aiming without perceiving or thinking that we've hit a mark is really hard to do, um, because what we're trying to do at that point is to separate the idea that just because I'm aiming at something, that I'm trying to catch it. And that's what's sort of behind the title and the teaching of Kosho Uchiyama, the title of his book being Opening the Hand of Thought. So we can imagine that thought, something that we're all sort of struggle with, especially when they're ruminating, when they're obsessive, thought is a grasping hand. It thinks of something and it grasps onto it and holds onto it very tightly. And that's what it does. That's just what it does. And this practice is a way for us to slowly release it so that even though that it's a natural function for it to grasp, for it to hold on to things, for it to attach to things, the second we see it happen, the second we see the aim happening, we can let go of it, that there's no mark, because everything is being aimed at, everything is being marked. But we can step away and notice what the aiming looks like, both in the aiming that is the hand grasping for a thought, and the aim that is just even in our sitting, wanting our sitting to be a very particular kind of way, wanting our calmness to look a very particular kind of way, wanting our sense of peacefulness to look a very particular kind of way, and just taking a step back and going, okay, what is everything that's happening right here? So there's a lot more to be said in that passage, but I'll leave it there right now. I might return to that passage at some point because, again, it's a rich passage. And now I'll be ending with a chanting of the 4 great Bodhisattva vows, which are in the description below. Chant with me if you feel like it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. All right. Thanks everybody for joining me this afternoon. And I will, for those who will come back, I will see you Wednesday evening. Have a good one. Stay safe.